Welcome to this module. My name is Liev Stafiadi, and together we will investigate the effect of learning context on cognition, as this was witnessed by a case study of two bilingual schools, one located in Thessaloniki, Greece, and the other in the US. The areas of study are early exposure to the foreign language and early immersion, as early as the first two grades of primary school. We are interested in exploring the cognitive skills that may be affected at this early stage of foreign language learning. Also, some ideas will be given to you regarding the type of activities you may use in your classes to evaluate student performance. The Greek study lasted 2 years and took place in Thessaloniki. The cognitive skills explored are linked to foreign language learning and learning in general. In particular, foreign language aptitude, which is the ease of picking up languages naturally and fast. Also, the ability to suppress a habituated but irrelevant motor response. And finally, working memory, the ability to store, manipulate, and recall information in ongoing communication. Emphasis is placed on the phonological store of working memory, as this strongly predicts L1 and L2 vocabulary learning in the early stages. So what you see in bold on the right are the skills where differences emerged between the two schools. Regarding the schools now, one was mainstream and did not introduce English at the time of testing, so learners had no knowledge of L2 English. The other was experimental for the teaching of English, and the participants were all 98 Greek monolingual speakers. They were matched for their socioeconomic status, with 49 students coming from each school. Regarding the third model, experimental school, this runs under the supervision of the School of English Language and Literature of Aristotle University of Thessaloniki with respect to staff selection, teaching methods, and curriculum design. Intensive exposure to English starts from grade 1, while from grade 3, the school offers additional CLIL classes. The study participants were exposed to 5 hours weekly during the first 2 grades via the total physical response method and the natural approach, since the school focuses a lot on oracy during the early stages. Regarding, now you see some pictures taken from that school. Regarding foreign language aptitude, which is a non-verbal skill, we use the test that unfortunately is no longer available, but still in the next slides, you will get some idea of the sub-tests where differences emerged between the two schools. As you can see, the tests tap on both memory and analytic skills. And what you see in bold were the skills in which the experimental school fared better than the control in grades 1 and 2. In grade 1, the experimental school students were better in finding the differences between two seemingly identical pictures, what you see on the right, which is a test of visual perception. They were also better in the inductive reasoning test on the left, which required that they put the jumbled pictures in order to make up a story that makes sense. In grade 2, they also displayed great progress in the ability to retain association between a picture and a sign shown previously to them, and be able later on to do the proper matching when these were randomly shown to them. In this slide, you see that in both grades, the experimental school was better than the control in the total score of foreign language aptitude and reasoning ability. The differences became even stronger in grade 2, while the same school also performed slightly better the second year in the task of making the proper pair associations. Next, phonological short-term memory was examined. In other words, the ability to store and recall back numbers in the same order these were spoken to the students. Overall, there were 8 sets of 2 attempts per set. And gradually the task became more difficult with the addition of one number as students managed to progress along the set of digits. 2 other tests tapped on the same ability, phonological short-term memory that is, and they were asked to students to recall some magic words, as they were called, some English or Greek-sounding words, which in fact do not exist. The task was pre-recorded and they had to wear headphones in order to be able to listen to the words. The experimental group again was better able to recall back the magic words in both grades. It is interesting that in grade 2, the difference in the recall of the English magic words became more evident, and so was the ability of recalling back the numbers spoken to them in grade 2. As for complex working memory, in other words, the ability to store and process before recalling back, the same test with the numbers was used, but this time the students had to recall the numbers in the reverse order, which made the test even more challenging. Interestingly, the mainstream school had an advantage in grade 1, but lost it in grade 2 as these experimental school students were slightly better the second year. So overall, what we notice is a clear developmental trend in both schools in all sub-skills examined. The 2 schools did not differ significantly as regards complex working memory and response inhibition, but did display a notable improvement in these skills from one grade to the next. Next, moving on to the US context and the Odyssey Charter School, we can say that this school is located in Wilmington, Delaware, and the study was carried out in September 2019. This time, the interest rests on 2 factors: the intensity of the bilingual program followed by the students and the degree of L2 exposure. The cognitive skills examined were again related to processes of observant learning. In other words, the abilities to regulate executive attention, to inhibit the irrelevant, and to update the contents of working memory, which by default is limited in resources. Again, what you see in bold is where differences emerged between the 2 cohorts. With regard to the Odyssey Charter School, some background information now. It was founded by Greek Americans. It is a bilingual school that offers L2 Greek as a mandatory subject from kindergarten to high school. The students are not of Greek heritage, and its case is quite unique, as all other schools in the state of Delaware, the schools that offer dual language education focus on Mandarin, Chinese, or Spanish. Some pictures taken from that school as well, both inside and from the outside. Now, with regard to the 2 bilingual programs the school offers, they run in parallel. One on the left that you see on the left is the immersion strand that allocates 50% of instructional time every day in the teaching of L2 Greek, while the second strand on the right is called the Foreign Languages in the Elementary School, FLES in short, which dedicates 1/4 of instruction time daily for the teaching of L2 Greek. The participants of grade 1 were 26 students, and those of grade 2 were 30 students. All were matched for socioeconomic status, age, sex, home language profile, and nonverbal intelligence. As regards the nonverbal tasks first, What you see on the left is called the Ravens matrices. It tests nonverbal reasoning and requires students to solve the problem posed in the first picture by asking them to find the perfect match out of the 6 options given. And what you see on the right is a test that taps on ability to monitor attention by asking students to suppress an improper move. So students basically had to focus on the central fish only and ignore all surrounding ones. They had to press a button on the left or right if the central fish was looking left or right respectively in all the slides they were shown. In the next game-like task, the students were shown one animal at a time, and they had to respond back by pressing K on the keyboard every time the current animal they were looking at matched the one that appeared 2 slides back. To complete the task, students had to constantly update the contents of working memory. In grade 1, the FLES cohort did better than the immersion one, but to be more accurate, they delayed response giving. In grade 2, both cohorts performed similarly, but what is interesting is that only the immersion students displayed a developmental trend by being more accurate that year. Lastly, the test, this is a verbal test, the proactive interference task that requires some verbal processing. The test examined attentional control and ability to fight memory interference. There was a dual mode of presentation. All pictures were both shown and spoken to them. There were 4 lists of 7 words each. At the end of each list, students were asked to count from a small number onwards as they were quite young, before recalling back the words of the list. The number counting task means to block word rehearsal and cause some interference. The words of the first 3 lists belonged in the same thematic family, fruits, while those of the 4th related to sports. What indicates memory interference is first, the gradual decline in word recall in each list, after the number counting, and secondly, the intrusions of words belonging to previous lists that emerge in later one. Release is manifested in the 4th list, where word recall goes back to or even exceeds original levels. So the trend noticed was identical in both cases. Word recall gradually declined in the first 3 lists to significantly improve in the last with a semantic shift in the words used, but still differences were more prominent in the immersion data. Now, as regards ability to block the irrelevant, intrusions from previous lists, it seems that in grade 1, the intensity of the program attended is a contributing factor, since the immersion students were better able to control such intrusions from happening. Nevertheless, length of exposure seems to play an important factor, as in grade 2, the FLES students significantly improved and allowed much fewer intrusions this time in the final list. So the general finding is that there are cognitive benefits of a different degree in either cohort. But even so, the gains were greater for the immersion students. Summing up, we noticed that in the case of the Greek school, where literacy was not yet in place, the skills mostly affected were associative memory, foreign language aptitude, and phonological awareness, and inductive reasoning, all skills that are very crucial in especially the very first stages of foreign language learning. On the other hand, in the case of the US school, where literacy is in place, we notice that bilingual instruction and factors like intensity and time spent in the program had an impact of a different degree on both cohorts. Firstly, on the ability to constantly update the contents of working memory, and secondly, on the ability to regulate attention on the relevant only. Both findings are important, as both skills allow an efficient operation of working memory, which by default is limited in resources. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the viewing.